Oh boy, oh boy. The rise of Blizzard Entertainment. Here we go.
My whole life, the most fun thing that I know to do is to make and play video games. I tried to recruit basically anybody.
Same, but without the making part.
At UCLA who was really good at comp sci into this harebrained idea that a bunch of kids were going to go start a computer company. I had $11,000 left over in my college fund, and I took that 11 to start Blizzard. Mike borrowed $11,000 from his grandma.
Yeah, I remember this.
And Blizzard started with $22,000, and we never took another penny.
Alan Adham is quite...
Isn't it crazy how what would happen is like if you just went... Like, everybody always asks for permission to succeed. Meanwhile, people that are successful go out and just do it. That's what it is. Still worth, and $22,000 to now, I mean, like, yeah, it was a lot of money, but it's still probably less than 200K. 22K wasn't like, I mean, come on, let's be
one of the world's most prolific game developers.
Yeah.
It's unimaginable to think that one person could have their fingerprints on so many iconic franchises like Warcraft, Starcraft, Diablo,
yeah, he was the last
Overwatch.
founder of Blizzard.
I had an hour to spend with Alan just weeks after he stepped down from his role as Chief Design Officer at Blizzard Entertainment, the company he founded with Mike Morhaime and Frank Pierce nearly 30 years prior. Despite having an endless list of questions related to the games he's produced, I wanted to focus the conversation on the lessons he learned along the way, his philosophy behind making games, taking risks, and creating a legacy of beloved franchises.
All right, we're going to see this.
This is Win Conditions.
Blizzard died with Activision? I don't think that's really what it was entirely. I don't think that was the whole thing.
I want to start the conversation asking you about everything before your time at Silicon and Synapse and before Blizzard, and really growing up in the 60s and 70s and 80s, not to date you, but what was your childhood like in the environment that you grew up in?
Yeah, so I grew up in Los Angeles in Southern California, of course. My parents both are born in Cairo, Egypt.
Damn.
And so I'm first generation. Both my parents came to the United States to study for their PhDs. My parents moved the family from Los Angeles to Orange County, Irvine, which is where Blizzard is located still to this day, to start a preschool. And so it was the only town in all of Southern California that would give them the license to start a preschool, because they had no experience. And back then, Irvine was this little kind of Orange Grove town with zero.
And then he started a preschool with World of Warcraft.
Population.
That's crazy how it just happens.
The amount of luck that it's taken to get to this stage is pretty crazy. I'm incredibly thankful for all of it.
How do you think your parents influenced you early in your career, and how they influenced some of your inspirations?
So my father's an engineer. He's a principal engineer, civil engineer, specialized in earthquakes. And my mother's an entomologist, which is the study of insects.
Yeah.
I have two brothers. The three of us were a full-time job for her, and she realized she liked taking care of kids more than taking care of insects. And so it was really her idea to start the preschool, and my father designed it, and they built it. And so they supported me in this crazy idea that one day I was going to start a video game.
Somebody goes in chat. This is good. I love this. So I want to pull this up because somebody's got a, what does he say? A guy had two parents with PhDs living in LA. The guy wasn't struggling. Then he got a ride to school and had cash left over. He was handed a privileged life. That's crazy to me that you would say that. Like, so are you going to trauma dump about how bad your life is while you're typing on a computer or probably a smartphone in what I would assume to be a first world country that you could afford on high-speed internet, about how the world is rigged against you and everything is not in your favor? Wow, bro, like, keep coping, man. Hey, hey, if you complain about this more, maybe your life will be better. Hey, just keep it up, man. Hey, just complain about how somebody else had it. That's going to make your life so much better. That's going to help you out a lot.
And they never discouraged me from it, which was pretty amazing. I don't think a lot of parents would have listened to their, 14, 15, 16-year-old kid talking about starting a video game company and taking it very seriously.
Oh, so you had that premonition early on, 14, 15, and 16-year-old. You're like, Atari's great. I love playing games, and I want to start a games company one day.
My favorite book was Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. So I used to dream, when other kids were talking about being firemen and being astronauts, I wanted to be a candy maker, mostly so I just eat a lot of chocolate. And then...
So that means that he would, because didn't the kids die? I mean, because like if you go back, like if you could make Willy Wonka into, like if you replace Willy Wonka with Jigsaw, I feel like you would only have to cut out half the scenes.
Around 14, 15, I think I was a freshman in high school, I saw a friend had a TRS-80 and another had an Apple II. And I managed to talk my father into buying us a home computer so we could do our homework, which of course we...
Homework.
Yeah, homework, right?
I did the same thing.
And so from that day forward, I was just fascinated by computers and programming and games. And I knew that's what I wanted to do. By just sort of good fortune, there were a group of us in high school and junior college, a little kind of gamers club, and we would get together and talk about games, and just between us and our audience, we might even swap games once in a while. And Brian Fargo was in that group. Brian then started Interplay. And so I had a front row seat as a friend of Brian's to seeing him start Interplay and grow Interplay into one of the best.
Damn, I didn't know they made Earthworm Jim. Bro, I love this game. This is on Sega Genesis. This is probably my favorite Sega Genesis game besides Sonic.
Game development companies at the time in the country. They were making games like Bard's Tale, I think, won Game of the Year, and Dragon Wars, and they had a few others that were just amazing, Castles and some other things. And I would play test on the weekends. And then by the time I was a junior in high school, I started writing code as a part-time job, sometimes after school, sometimes over the summer, for Interplay. So then I went to school at UCLA, computer science. And that's where I met Mike and Frank. There's some funny stories about how we all met. And a couple others we don't talk about as often, Pat and James.
To be honest, I thought he was going to say we don't talk about because like they got canceled or some shit. Like I was, that's what I thought he was about to say. He said we don't talk about this anymore because they're trying to be creeps.
Also comp sci from
after
UCLA.
All that shit.
They graduated later but joined us. There are even a few others. I tried to recruit
Your brain is cooked, it is.
Anybody at UCLA who was really good at comp sci.
Yeah.
I were maybe 10. I managed to talk 5 into joining us, into this harebrained idea that a bunch of kids were going to go start a computer company. We got to ride this beautiful wave, which none of us could have foreseen.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest, like, back in the day,
how I met
it's
Mike
actually crazy for me to think about how much of a gold standard Blizzard was. Like, Blizzard was like From Software in the 90s. I'm not even kidding you. Like, every game was fucking insane. In like early 2000s,
story.
it was nuts,
each other
man.
Peripherally from classes we'd had together, but
they were bigger.
Really
Yeah, they were.
Each other. I didn't know his name, and vice versa. We were sitting in a lab coding, and happened to be sitting side by side. And I got up to go get a cup of coffee. You know, ended up bumping into some friends and talking. Well, before I left, I locked my computer using my password. And when I came back, I sat down. And I unlocked the computer and continued working.
Okay.
And Mike, you know, this guy sitting next to me, I didn't really know, turned to me and he said, "How did you do that?" And I said, "What? You just lock it when you leave. You unlock it when you come back."
Windows
and
L.
He says, "No, while you were gone, it timed out and I locked it using my password. How did you unlock it?" And I said, "What's your password?" And it turned out, by some crazy coincidence, we both were using the same password.
Was it password?
And so, like, to think that Mike and I, if that moment doesn't happen, maybe Mike and I never really meet each other. You know, maybe
1, 2, 3, 4.
Blizzard never exists. It's kind of crazy.
So you get a chance to meet some of what turned out to be early founders.
Yeah.
Did you have to pull them into making a company together, or was that all a natural, like, yeah, this feels like the right thing to do?
You know, the business plan was pretty simple. It was, hey, we'll go make some video games. It'll be super fun. And if it doesn't work, we'll all be 22 and we'll go get regular jobs. That was the entirety of the business plan. We would just run ads in the local paper, and you know, college kids would come in, or high school kids would come in with, you know, sketches they'd written on the back of their homework. And it was so simple back then compared to how technical things are today. We would give them a pencil
Holy
and a sheet of paper and say, like, draw a cool landscape with, you know, a human figure and a monster on it, and then leave the room and come back a couple.
You know what's really funny about this is what Power World did. Didn't they have like one of the main guys that did their art was like some middle school or high school kid? Yeah.
Hours later, and if the art looked good, it's like you were hired. When we hired you,
Yeah,
the
a
first thing
7-Eleven
you did on
worker.
your first day was go to Home Depot and buy a $40 office desk and build it yourself. It was relatively easy to get started, and the fact that we were working as a port house meant we didn't need the capital raise. So again, by today's standards, getting started is pretty tough. I had $11,000 left over in my college fund, and my parents said, you know, buy a car, go to Europe, do whatever you want to do with it. And I took that 11 to start Blizzard. Mike borrowed 11,000 from his grandma, and Blizzard started with $22,000, and we never took another penny.
Damn.
It feels like throughout everything you've said so far.
I feel like, yeah, 11K 30 years ago. Yeah, no, it was more money than that. It's been middle finger AAA in gaming. Yeah. I mean, I feel like also now, like one of the big differences is that I bet you can probably do a lot more work remotely, whereas like you don't need everybody to be under the same roof. I'm sure that probably makes things easier or better in a lot of cases. But yeah, I still think doing stuff like this is still possible.
There's been kind of a spirit to figure out a business using maybe some of your education, some of your network, some of your passion, but it feels like you were the person instigating a few of these key decisions. Like, what was that fire in your belly that you would say kept on driving you more than just like, hey, we play games, we're having fun?
Somebody goes, for sure not privileged, 11K 30 years ago. Keep this in mind. There's a lot of people that say stuff like that, is that there's a person who's worse off than you that is where you want to be. Just keep that in mind, man. Keep coming up with excuses for why you're a loser. If you come up with 10 of them, it'll make you not a loser anymore. Yeah, you won't be a loser if you come up with 10 excuses in a row that make sense that get upvotes.
And like, let's start a business. Was that just
it's like Beetlejuice
desire to follow your passion?
My whole life, the most fun thing that I know to do is to make and play video games. I still, to this day, I probably play between 2 to 4 hours of games per day.
Thank fucking God. Thank fucking God. See, there it is. Yeah, 2 to 4 hours a day. That's a lot. That's a lot. Every fucking day. That's great.
Passion has been with me since that
What's he
Apple
playing?
II Plus at
Bro, I want to know what he's
14 years
playing.
old, and it's never left. So that's what's driven me. It's the art and craft of making the games that is so incredibly satisfying.
SRS? Candy
And
Crush?
then, of course,
No, bro.
The success that Blizzard's had over the years reinforces that. Because when you see like all the good that it does, the joy and the stories and the people and the relationships people who've met on World of Warcraft and other things, and the people and the relationships people who've met on
See, this is the way it used to be, guys. It used to be so great. Yep. Man, those were the days.
World of Warcraft and other things, and built lifelong friendships, or even met their
Yeah, there used to be
spouses.
real girls.
It's fun and it's pretty gratifying all at the same time, and it's creative and it's artistic. It's all the things you want. So for me, that passion comes from that.
The success
there's no
you had
body
early on,
pillows there
RPM
either.
Racing,
Keep that in
Rock and Roll
mind.
Racing, Lost Vikings, and then Warcraft. Even at that point, was there a pattern that you were detecting in the way that you approached game design or principles behind how to make things? Because it seems so far you've taken risks, but most of them have paid off. What was that learning process like early on?
There's actually a repeatable sort of pattern that we use at Blizzard, and there's a repeatable set of design principles that go along with it, and they've evolved. They're not static. So if you look at our early games like Rock and Roll Racing and Blackthorn is another good example.
I didn't play
Lost
these
Vikings.
two. I have this one. I literally have this box downstairs. This is my first game from Blizzard. I played it on Super Nintendo.
Those are all really, really cool games, well-made games, and really fun to play. But the truth is, none of those really broke through or changed the world for us. It's Warcraft 1
and Warcraft
setting
2.
the stage for Warcraft 2.
That shit went really crazy.
Warcraft 2 is the first time that we kind of break through. This is one of our sort of secrets, right? How to make games that appeal to a casual or mid-core player, but also to a hardcore player.
This is one of the things that, like, I feel like this is the really big problem that, like, retail WoW has, is it doesn't do that as much. Like, that's why classic WoW was so good, is that it appealed to every different type of player. And that's why games like Elden Ring are also really good, is that you can have casual players that just have broken builds that one-shot bosses, but you can also have people that do, like, rune level 1 runs. All in the same game. At the time,
the prevailing wisdom was you sort of had to pick an audience. And if you tried to make a game for everybody, then you would get nobody.
Like, Starcraft was another really great example. Like, Brood War is, like, one of the highest skill cap games of all time, right? But at the same time, a lot of people back in the day played StarCraft. Everybody played StarCraft, and they had fun playing the game, just on a base level. Like, other really successful games like that are like Fortnite and Smash Brothers.
And we rejected that notion. We thought, actually, there are examples, and the simplest, probably two, that we talk about, you know, the canonical examples that we give at Blizzard to help people understand are chess and Go. Go is so simple.
Yeah, chess is a good... Yeah.
You can explain how to play it in 30 seconds. But actually, it's incredibly strategically deep despite its simplicity. And chess is the same thing. Chess only has 6 piece types. You can explain the rules of chess in about 5 minutes to an 8-year-old. And you can play, and then that 8-year-old could play every day for the rest of their life. Strategic depth does not require complexity. And the whole...
You see that? That's why you don't need 150 fucking buttons. See? You don't need that. John, remember what I was saying about how whenever you listen to people that are, like, absolutely fucking goated, that they say shit that is so obvious, but I feel like nobody says? This is exactly what I was talking about.
Design are those rare gems where you find strategically deep games that are still simple. That lets you invite in casual and mid-core players and then graduate them up the sort of, you know, strategic.
A lot of people confuse difficulty with complexity. You know why? It's because people that have spent like 50 hours learning a really complex game don't want to make it easier, because then it makes them feel less smart. This is like something that they can have over somebody, you know?
The strategic curve until they're, you know, hardcore. And so you see that echoing in all of our game designs. Paired with that is IP development. And so Lost Vikings and Blackthorn, cool IP.
Yeah.
But they also...
Man, I must have really sucked at this game. I never have seen this stage before. I never remember seeing this stage, bro. Damn, I must have been fucking garbage. Yeah.
But they also weren't necessarily as well known as token high fantasy or what I'll call high science fiction. And so what we kind of figured out with Warcraft is if we tap into this pop culture, sometimes we call it a common folklore. You see it in Warcraft and you see it in Starcraft.
Yeah, I mean, WoW really got lucky and Warcraft got really lucky that Lord of the Rings popped off, because, like, bro, if you were in a guild in 2006, on raid night, there was at least one person online that had a name that was derivative of Lord of the Rings.
Science fiction with space marines and bugs, and you know, you can look at those as common tropes. Most people don't know that the Protoss are actually partially derived from the Roswell aliens. And so now we put our spin on them, but you know, the big-eyed telepaths, you know, with no mouth, right?
See, that's the same picture I show you guys all the time about how
go into a store,
how good it used to be, how Death Knights used to be really cool.
In a sea of hundreds of other boxes. So
this was at, and this is what's crazy is, like, you see this thing, it says game complete. We don't see this anymore. Like, this is something real, real old. But this is the way it used to be, man. You used to see this all the time. You would buy the game, it would be complete. I still have my CD. Yeah, I do too.
Just had a few seconds to sort of catch their attention, and by picking
you buy it
something that
once,
they kind
and
of
then you
already
own the
knew,
game.
an orc or an elf or, you know, a dragon or a space marine, you had a better chance that it would resonate as opposed to picking.
What he's saying is like actually totally fucking accurate. Is what he's saying is that they capitalized on existing tropes in the market rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, because they knew that people like this kind of stuff. So they used that as a foundation to build their own world. Again, almost every type of successful media does this.
Something, you know, cool but random.
Yeah.
Going back to kind of the Warcraft 2 90s leading up to early 2000s, are these your ideas then to like, let's put in a cinematic, let's find the right artist to put on the box art, let's, you know, make this thing bigger and, you know, fill in the blanks for our audiences to really feel like they're part of this? Was that like a combination of yourself or finding artists or putting all these components together? Like, how did you actually have the wherewithal to put the recipe together?
Well, in the early days, you know, I'm credited as executive producer on Warcraft, Starcraft, Diablo, and all the early Blizzard titles. Back then, executive production was a little like we would think of a film director today. A combination of organizing, of, you know, guiding talent, of strategic direction, of actual game design, a little bit of...
You know, I bet that probably would be better, because I don't know, but like, I bet now it's probably so many people that there's a lot of distortion. Because if it's one guy that's in charge of all that, yeah, he's him, right? He's the guy. Yeah, there's one cook.
Everything, right? And then by the time we get to World of Warcraft, roles start to stratify. The teams are larger, and so I think my credit on World of Warcraft is lead designer. That's at a time where the term game director didn't exist, but today we would call that game director. The truth of the matter is, as a director of a movie, you're surrounded by, you know, the best films are made by teams of great people. And I was incredibly fortunate to have on my team, you know, people like Metzen and Samwise and dozens of others, Mike and Frank and dozens of others, too many to name. And so no one person can take credit for all the things that we did. It was just this beautiful harmony of a bunch of, you know, 20-somethings and later 30-somethings that just really loved making games. And everybody brought their own magic, whether it was tech or...
Wait, they actually did bring their own. Holy fuck. God damn.
Art or creative direction. It's hard
to
they're
real
imagine
nerds.
Us being as successful doing the things that we did without all those people.
Yeah, they couldn't afford chairs.
Hiring these individuals, and did you have any principle around how you'd go about interviewing later in the stage outside of like finding artists to sketch, you know, pictures?
Yeah.
How did that evolve over time to like grow teams and identify super talented programmers or designers or artists? Like, how did that change as you evolved through Warcraft?
I will say one thing, and this will give away a little bit of a secret on our dev teams. The icebreaker that I often use and many of us use is, so, you know, tell me about some of the games you're playing these days. And it sounds like it's an icebreaker, but in many ways, for me, it's...
See, remember what I was... Bro, I feel so fucking validated. Oh my fucking God. Yes. Fucking exactly. What games are you playing? What are you doing? Exactly. Devs playing games. Yes. Replay it.
That I often use and many of us use is, so, you know, tell me about some of the games you're playing these days. And it sounds like it's an icebreaker.
Man.
But in many ways, for me, it's the most important question in the
sure
entire
is.
interview. And so I always
you know, bro, he's thinking the same thing.
Secret to, you know, its early secret was that we hired gamers. We instinctively understood, and it sounds kind of silly, but if you want to make a game company, hiring gamers is probably a good idea. It's...
Man. That's crazy.
funny, but I would say now in the industry, it's very common to find lots of people in game dev studios that don't actually play games. They maybe.
I know. That's the thing, is I know. See, thank you. See, I say this, people are like, no, that's not true. He said, see, I fucking knew it. I fucking knew it all along.
Excellent engineers or excellent, and whatever their craft is, but don't play games. You risk losing a little bit of the magic if you do that.
Yep.
And the number of, thousands of cool little accidental inspired ideas that come out of those conversations, those accidental conversations, they go away if you're not all, hardcore gamers.
That's
and
right.
So that's, one of the secrets to our interview process is, as simple as it sounds, looking for people who really passionately love games.
Wow, how crazy is that? What the fuck?
The 30 of us here and 29 of us or so are in R&D. We're all fanatic game players, even our office manager, Christina. The reason we hired her, and she doesn't do any R&D, but the reason we hired her is because she owns her own Super Nintendo. Not her brothers, or her boyfriends. It's hers, and she plays the games.
In the span of your time from 1991 leading up to 2004, leading up to World of Warcraft, it didn't seem like
True
Blizzard
gamer,
Yeah.
every IP from Warcraft to Warcraft 2, and then Diablo and Starcraft. Are there untold stories around actual risky projects where you're like, man, this thing could actually break the bank if this doesn't go well, and we bet the house on maybe one of these IPs or one of these developments that maybe we shouldn't have, or it could have sent things the other way?
I bet that was probably WoW,
Behind
right?
the curtain. I have this presentation I give sometimes on how Blizzard incubates new projects, and there's a slide. It shows a picture of the Blizzard campus, with overlaid like a curtain, this beautiful curtain. And then the next slide is the curtain pulled back, and there's this clown, like a horror clown with a knife, and there's blood everywhere. And it's like behind the curtain, it's actually a horror show. And so we don't usually let people know that until they've joined, but the creative process is a chaotic mess. People generally know some of our more high-profile sort of canceled projects, but in the early days, we were probably about 50-50. And so we would start projects with, a loose framework of what it is we thought we wanted to make, and then either pivot quickly because something better came along, or just cancel it because it wasn't fun. And so
they did that with Starcraft Ghost in the mid 2000s. They even had playable demos, gameplay of it. It was in Game Informer and everything, and they just nope.
You can Google images of things like Warcraft adventures. We thought it'd be cool to make an adventure game using the Warcraft IP. And it was around the time that adventure games, that genre was starting to sunset. And it turns out...
Thank God, by the way. These games were... I'm just going to say it. Literal fucking dog shit. Every single one of these games was trash. They were so bad. It's and I understand that it's in 1996, this is all we had. And it was this is it. But man, they were dog shit.
It's also really hard to write
they tried.
Comedy Monkey Island.
We work with a lot of small teams that are in the process of going from 5 to 10 people to 20, 30, 40, 50. Can you talk a little bit about...
Chatter's getting upset. Guys, if you are old enough to get upset about that, please don't. It's probably bad for your blood pressure. Yeah, remember what your doctor told you. Yeah, if you're old enough to get mad about what I just said, really don't. Do not get mad about it.
That process of scaling up teams, distributing responsibility for you, going from someone that was doing a lot of things to eventually kind of moving more into a more scaled role, supervising others. What was that like in that process?
It's hard enough to build one team to make one excellent thing, but then to scale that into 2 teams is incredibly difficult. And what you have to accept, and this I find it's still hard, even today at Blizzard, it's still hard. You have to be willing to risk taking some of the best people from the project that is currently keeping your studio afloat what's paying the bills, and moving them on to the next thing.
That's what they did with Jeff Kaplan. Yeah, he was the game director of WoW, and they put him on Overwatch. That's true. Yep.
And that's really, really scary. And so when your directors, whether it's your art director, tech director, game director, to take them off your most successful project instead of working on the live game or on the next sequel and putting them on something new is incredibly risky.
That's probably another thing that makes live service games sometimes kind of bad, is that they could make it to where people are locked into like kind of supporting one game and not making something that's more innovative. I feel like that's a good factor. I never really thought about that, but definitely true.
It's risky in the short run, but if you think about it, if you just do the same thing over and over again, that's actually riskier in the long run.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yep.
And so the beauty of that system is it gives their...
There's going to be 8 new dungeons, like a new raid, and 4 new zones.
And it's then a chance to step into the director role, which is really good for them. It gives your highest initiative, most experienced, and most creative developers a chance to keep doing new things. And so that can make for a really healthy system. And then once you have 2, it's easier to get to 4, etc. So Blizzard today has a whole lot of teams spread across a bunch of different IPs led by a bunch of amazing people. And part of why we've stood the test of time and why we're here 3 decades later, still ourselves making great games, it's having the sort of courage to take your best and brightest and let them go off and do the new thing.
So when you're at the pinnacle...
I think that's true with streaming too, actually. Like, I think that a lot of really successful streamers are successful because they take big risks and they pay off. I think also there's a huge survivorship bias with that, is because you're not really talking about or thinking about a lot of the people that took big risks and then they failed. But I do think that the majority of cases, that is definitely what happens.
Goal of developing these games, these IPs, how did you continuously find inspiration, or did you have mentors at the time outside of Blizzard? Where did you go to if you needed to refill your energy as far as like innovation or creative spark? Would you go within games? Would you go to movies? Would you go into other businesses? Like, where were you drawing your creativity and your inspiration?
Everywhere you look, you know, whether it's a book that you're reading or a movie or a TV show, but even other places like I'll see song names and think, oh, what a creative title, you know, or restaurant names and think, wow, that's a really cool name for a restaurant. And if you're creative, you know, those inspirations come from unexpected places sometimes, right? One of the inspirations for World of Warcraft was actually Animal Crossing.
Really?
Yeah. And so
we're seeing a lot of that in like Dragonflight. You know, it took like almost 20 years to fully come to light, but now we really getting into it, right? That's the vibe.
Animal Crossing, both in terms of how like alive the world felt, and we wanted to capture that in World of Warcraft.
I played the first Animal Crossing.
Felt like a world.
That's the only one I ever played,
but also the real-time clock. And so Animal Crossing, the time in the game is the time on your system, and so it's real time. If it's dark outside, it's dark, and things close in-game. And if somebody had proposed that idea without having played Animal Crossing, it would just sound insane. I was playing a bunch of Animal Crossing while...
See, this is like another example of like games that are like, because, you know, they changed this over time, and I think it was a mistake to change this to like change it to where like the game didn't have like a full like night and day mode. And I feel like, again, it's one of those instances where people that play games understand the value that brings if they are insightful enough to be able to figure it out. And it's like about... I think that a lot of games that are really good have annoyances that feel like they make the game better and they make it more complete. And I think a lot of bad games have annoyances that are just put there arbitrarily. And I think that's, again, like, you know, it's about people that actually play games and understand it.
We were working
That was all generations,
World
exactly.
of Warcraft.
WoW was like that? It used to be,
pitched that idea to the team, to a person, the team said, Alan, that's the stupidest idea ever.
There it is.
And I said, just trust me.
Yeah.
And I had to we're probably about 40 people on the team at the time. I 1v40'd the whole team on real time and said, okay, look, I went to our server engineer. His name was Joe, and Joe Rumsey, he was amazing. I said, Joe, just put in the clock in a way that we can scale it. And if I'm wrong on this, we'll just make it a regular clock. He did it. And then, kind of one by one, people would come into my office over the next few days because we were playing, we were playing in our free time, our own game. And
what was that?
He did it. And then, kind of one by one, people would come into my office over the next few days because we were playing, we were playing in our free time, our own game.
That's crazy. Wow.
And started at first with people walking in and them saying, I don't hate it as much as I thought I was going to hate it. And then it slowly turned into people saying, like, I was up early the other day with my newborn and I was sitting playing and I watched the sunrise over Westfall. And it was one of the prettiest moments.
How many of you guys were losers enough to where you were there whenever it was New Year's and they had like fireworks and Stormwind? That's a lot of people, huh?
I've ever had. Inspiration comes from playing games and the rest of the world, but also I always encourage our designers, and all of our developers to play on different platforms because you'll find inspiration and learn lessons.
I wish Rod had fucking done that on Diablo 4. He would have seen how fucking annoying it was to summon corpses in Necromancer. See? This fucking exactly. Because he said, oh, my favorite class is Necromancer. Oh, yeah, you don't understand a problem with corpse explosion? Yeah, because you're playing on a fucking console where it auto-aims it. Shit's annoying. It was annoying as hell, man.
From mobile, you can take to PC and vice versa, and console. Yeah. There's so many amazing games out there, and each one of them has lessons to teach you, positive and negative, by the way. Sometimes you learn what not to do and what you don't like, and that can help save tons and tons of development time. People at Blizzard know I'm generally not a fan of prototyping. It's something that a lot of folks in our industry talk about. I'm generally not a fan of prototyping. My feeling is the world is full of thousands of prototypes that we don't have to build. Just go pick the games that are similar to what you want to make. Those are your prototypes.
That's right.
And then get on it.
There's plenty of games that fuck up on their own. Just steal it. Hey.
Well, I have to ask then, 13 years in, you're coming up with some early mechanisms of what would turn into an MMO, which is World of Warcraft, and then you leave Blizzard.
Yeah, what happened there?
If you're willing to say more, like what was that transition like? And throughout your 10 years before returning, what were you doing?
Yeah.
Twiddling your thumbs and watching South Park episodes pontificate on World of Warcraft?
Well, it's an interesting story. So, you talked about where do you find inspiration? Where do you go to recharge your batteries? So, one of the hardest skills, or one of the hardest things for me to learn was how to scale and how to let go. The truth of the matter is I never really quite let go. And so game directing World of Warcraft while Mike and I were running Blizzard, those are two full-time jobs. And so I'd basically been working for 13 years, 7 days a week, and I would go to bed sleeping and thinking about the problems we were working on, design and otherwise. I found myself in my kind of early 30s, mid 30s, unmarried. I dated a lot, but I hadn't quite yet met my soulmate, my significant other. And I'd met a girl and I was pretty sure she was the one. And so we're married today. And so it all worked out. And I had it in my head that I needed to take a break and I needed to lock in this relationship. I did, and that story's amazing. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. What I should have done was taken a sabbatical and then come back. And so I pretty freely admit, and I've said this before, I'm on the record, leaving right before World of Warcraft shipped was the biggest mistake of my life. Not just financially, but creatively. A year later, I found myself recharged and really missed the teams and the creative process. And, we all understand now, for the long run, work-life balance is a thing, sort of. For you startups out there, maybe not so much work-life balance. Once you're stable, you've got a bunch of trusted developers that you're working with. Theoretically, you can build an organization that can do lots of great things without you having to work 7 days a week. But
that's the best thing to do, man, is you have to start something. Like, I remember there was never a happier day in my guild than whenever I found somebody to do all the work for me. I remember, because, so the guild master quit, and, I had the best job ever in the guild. I was an officer, and I got all the loot first, and I didn't do anything. And then he quit, and then he made me the guild master. And so now I have to, and he was raid leading too, so now I have to be the guild master and the raid leader out of fucking nowhere. And I remember, how stressful that was, and I remember how good it was. Whenever finally I had somebody take over, and I could just not show up, I could just fall asleep. I didn't even care. It was not a big deal at all. I was so happy. It was the best day of my fucking life.
What I did during the time away is I started a quantitative hedge fund, which is kind of nuts. People go how did you go from games to a hedge fund? It turns out they're actually really similar in many ways. In my early career, I'd written AIs for things like, racing and rock and roll racing, or chess algorithms for battle chess, one of the games I had worked with Interplay on in college.
AI,
and
yeah,
so I had always wondered if you could apply comp sci and AI to trading the stock market. And so I left Blizzard with the idea that I was gonna build a SQL warehouse, archive a bunch of historical financial data. I had already spent a decade reading all about Warren Buffett and Ben Graham and Peter Lynch. When we sold Blizzard in 1994, I necessarily had to learn how to invest. So as an engineer, you look at other people in a space, kind of look at best in class.
You just copy what they do.
Try to replicate, what they're doing, and then maybe extend on it, right? And so
I feel like that works with a lot of stuff. That's what I did with streaming. Whenever I started streaming, I was like, okay, well, what's Kripparrian doing? What's Reckful doing? Okay, I'll just do that. What's Athene doing? Okay. Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. Yeah, I'll just do that. It's easy. Yeah.
It was real.
That's a good place to start.
Work. And I started this hedge fund then, which was another big fun game. And we did really well for a while. I didn't close the fund fast enough. 2016, it already starts, the sort of apocalypse of value fund investors. I think 2016, 4,000 or 5,000 value-oriented hedge funds shut down. And it's actually continued to this day. It hasn't stopped yet.
You're a fascinating person. Game design, quantitative hedge fund.
It's all a big game.
And then back to game design.
And then back to game design. So how did I go back?
Tell me.
Yeah. So Mike Morheim was one of the investors in the fund. And so when I sent the letter out, Mike and I talked. And, for me, I'd always dreamed of returning to Blizzard, but I had, committed and raised capital from friends and family. So I was on that other path, which was really fun too, actually. But Mike and I talked, and I think Mike said something like, we could use your superpower to help us start new things. That was the strength that I brought to Blizzard, and the funnest thing I know is building new teams, building new IPs, and making new games. And so often I would do that.
That's sad, because whenever this guy left Blizzard and then that survival game probably didn't happen, I wonder if that was related. That's sad.
And then, like with World of Warcraft and other titles since, I would get them either into production or over the finish line, and then step over to do the new thing, like we talked about with internal mobility. And somebody else would then do either the sequel, run the live ops, do the expansion sets.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful system that allowed me to move from game to game to game and allowed lots of great developers at Blizzard to step into those titles, learn how to run them at scale, how to make amazing sequels or expansion sets, and then that positioned them one day to start their own thing. So it was perfect.
So it's almost like a founder in
So
residence.
he hands it off and allows somebody else to ruin it. I mean, I'm kind of the same way. Like, I will start projects and get shit running and get it going. Like, oh yeah, this is a good idea. Okay, this is what I think you should do. It's running. Everything's good. Okay, now I can finally fucking leave.
So
Yeah.
you could come in, you could get things
Okay,
off
drop
the
the-
ground,
yeah.
you could coach teams up, and then you could go on and launch another kind of initiative or project within the company.
That's exactly right. And so Mike said, come back and do more of that. And I came back to Blizzard excited. I was very happy to be back. A lot had changed, of course.
Yeah, what were the
Yeah.
biggest changes when you came back?
The biggest one
storm
industry-wise
mounts.
was that, teams were so much larger.
Yeah.
When I left, we shipped World of Warcraft with about 60 developers. And the majority of the dev cycle, it was a 5-year dev cycle, would have been around half of that, 30 or 40 developers. And so, coming back to team sizes of hundreds, 300 and 400, and that was necessary because fidelity and scope had gotten larger, but also because of live ops, right? So World of Warcraft now had millions of players. We didn't get to make it in quiet isolation. You had to be working on the next thing even as you were making, live content. That's probably the biggest difference in game development from, the early days where you made a game, put it in a box.
Well, then why the fuck does a game that's not live op need that many people? Like, that's what's crazy to me is I see the amount of budget that gets spent on like single player games like this. Then how the fuck did this happen? That's crazy.
Shipped it. Maybe you patched it once or twice, and then you could move almost the whole team on to the next thing.
It's a whole nother skill set.
Totally different now. Really shipping the game. If you look at our team sizes when we ship Hearthstone or Overwatch or World of Warcraft, our team sizes quadruple over time shortly after ship as you scale into the success and try to do all the
Jesus.
things, live, esports, DLCs, expansions, and at the same time, maybe you're working on the next big numbered flagship sequel. That's a huge lift to do all at the same time.
And a huge departure too
Yeah.
when you said strategically deep but technically simple. I forgot the exact you had, but I feel like live ops and games that evolve over time almost go counter to the idea of
Right.
the beautiful game that you try to make like chess.
They do, and we talk about that. In our design principles within Blizzard, one of the things we talk about is that exact challenge. If you were the maker of chess and your boss told you make chess 2.0, there are things you could make the board bigger,
Yeah.
you could add new pieces, you could make the board 3D. Almost anything that you do to chess would make it a worse game, in fact.
I think of a lot of games that's happened with. A lot. Man. True, yeah. Sometimes things don't need a 2. By the way, that's my opinion about Bloodborne. I don't think Bloodborne needs a sequel. I don't think it. I think it deserves to not have one even.
It would make it more complicated and less accessible. So we
It does
to
need a
teach at
PC
Blizzard
port
then,
and a
as
remaster,
our
though.
game
Yeah,
is in
true.
Live operations for a long time. Try to avoid increasing the surface area of the game. Try to avoid just adding a bunch of new things. Try to avoid making it more complex, both to new players who are going to see your game for the first time 5 or 10 years after it's come
Yeah,
out.
see that? About avoiding making the game more complex for new players. Yep. That's what's happened with a lot of MMOs. It's not just WoW. Like, BDO is like this. Like, every MMO is almost like this. It's just so over-designed now.
But also
Bloated as
win
fuck,
back.
yeah.
Often you have players that lapse and then will come back a year or two later, and you don't want them to bounce either because the game has become so much more complicated.
Also at this
I've had a lot of friends that have done that. They try to get back into WoW, but like there was so much shit they didn't understand, they quit.
point, you've now
Trying to say we
left
didn't need Dark
Blizzard.
Souls 2? No one needed
and
Dark
you've
Souls
got
2.
a chance to get back to Blizzard, learn almost in some ways how to ship modern game titles.
Right.
go through some of what we just talked about of like the new age of operating a live ops game, shipping multiple things at once.
Right.
What is exciting for you right now, particularly, and are you leading up to Alan's perfect game in the future, or what's getting you excited? You know, stepping away from a Blizzard that you've spent 30 years of your life creating.
I thought I was going to take a little time to just sort of, you know, reset and smell the roses, get healthy, do a little travel, all the same thing that everybody else, clean the garage.
And now you're doing a podcast with me.
Right. And what's happened instead is it's been amazing, actually, the outreach from, you know, companies, AI tech, gaming companies, interested in what I'm going to do next or how I might be able to help them has been really nice. And all of that without any real proactive effort on my part.
Well, I wonder why. I wonder why could that possibly be?
And so it's opened my mind to some
maybe because he made Diablo
possibilities, and I might pursue some of those.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, I've had games and new game types and been thinking about, you know, game development since I was 14, and it's never stopped. And so I might try to recreate some of that early Blizzard magic someday and something new, but stay tuned. I'm not sure.
This gets me really excited. And if I've learned anything from you over this conversation, it is that you are extremely adaptive to things you perceive going on, whether in the game space, the financial space. You're always looking around.
Dude, I mean, that's my mindset is like, I just want to see more games. Like, I think that, like, this is the truth, is like things like Unreal 5 and like the amount of tech and like the accessibility of it, it gives people, it's like a double-edged sword, right? Where it gives people who could never make a game the ability to make a game, but it also gives people the ability to make a game who should never make a game. So it's a little bit of both, but I feel like it's better now that anybody can make a game, and it's an overall positive. Same thing happened with making music. Yeah.
Corner for what is truly at its core fun and exciting. And I don't think that really has left you at any point. It's just really the thing that will instigate, you know, an idea or the next creative vision that almost feels like you're on the precipice of finding.
Well, because I continue to play all the time, I'm always excited to play the kind of the cool new emergent games, and they're this amazing source of inspiration. So there's a lot of really interesting things happening today in the indie scene and in, you know, maybe we call them mid-sized companies. Things
he is 100% talking about Helldivers too. 100%
with Helldivers or Pal World, things like that.
Okay.
Not what we would think of as traditional AAA games, but still really, really interesting and really cool.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty fun to think about what that might look like, you know.
Do you have any advice for a gaming company founder, designer, you know, someone who can channel your...
It's good that he's talking like about Pal World being successful too, because I feel like Pal World, like a lot of people didn't want to talk about it being successful because of the fact that like it had like a lot of like, oh, well, this is like weird stuff. Like, oh, well, you can't just cook the animals and make them work for you. Like, yeah, you can. Like, watch. It's just this easy. You hit them with a stick and like, that's it. Yeah, Nintendo or something like that, right? And so like, I'm glad to see that.
Early stage energy or any principled thinking that you wish you had this guidance when you're starting off building, you know, the very first Silicon and Synapse or Blizzard?
Know your audience. Don't forget that what you're making is for your players, for your audience.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. Oh my God. Yep.
In the ideal, your audience is you yourself. And if it can't be, make sure you're involving your community and testers and, you know, user research as early as possible, and be honest with yourself about that. Often we get enamored of a cool new technology or a cool new idea, our passion project, but that's not the right way to look at it. That really needs to be viewed as a means to an end, the end being serving your customers, and in our case, players.
That's what's so crazy about it is like, I feel like that's one of the things that a lot of games, it's so weird for me to say this, and I almost feel stupid saying this, but it feels a lot to me Like a lot of games are not even it's like they're not even for players. It's almost like there are like games that are made for game reviewers and not actual gamers. Or investors, yeah, or absolutely, you're right, investors as well.
I think that's probably the most important thing that I could communicate in this sea of beautiful ideas and amazing, founders making cool things. It sounds obvious, but, make sure that you're making them.
I'm going to be honest. I think this is one of the best events we ever did. And, bro, remember the fucking Sony with the fucking Phase 2 where he put on all of that gear? And then bro, oh my God, that was so fucking funny. That was great, yes. Oh my God. That was so fucking fun. It was amazing, yes.
For the people.
I discovered Shobek. Yeah, he's great.
And stay close. Ideally, they
there
would
he
be
is.
Yourself. So.
Yeah.
That's great advice. Well, thank you for all this time.
The Zico thing was insane too.
I feel honored to just have gleaned some of these insights and hear more of the stories of, journey that you're on. And I wish you the best of luck. And I really hope that you end up building the game that, Alan thought of when he was 14.
Thanks. This has been really fun.
Well, thank you so much.
Damn. I'm so glad to see this shit because I feel so much more validated right now. Like so much shit, and it's like people would tell me like you don't know what you're talking about. Like no, it's not like they don't actually play games. See, he fucking said it. I fucking knew it. It's so obvious. Yeah, what a damn video. I know. I'll link you guys the video. This is good. Give it a like. I want to see more of these. I've watched some of the other A16Z videos before, and I've been behind. I was going to watch this maybe a week ago whenever it came out, but I ended up not doing it. But yeah, holy fucking shit. There it is. I don't agree with the video? Well, then you're wrong. Okay? You've been validated? I have. I've been fucking validated. Make the game for gamers. I play video games 2 to 4 hours every fucking day. Yep, there it is. Oh my God. You should watch the Rise of Hidetaka Miyazaki. Yeah, I would watch that. If somebody linked that to me, I would definitely look at it. This is so good. Vindicated, not validated. Well, either way, I'm happy. Like, that's it. Like, yeah, make games great again. Exactly. I mean, I feel like right now, like, here's the truth. I actually think that games right now are in one of the best places they've ever been in. Like, right now, I think is the most healthy and also the least healthy point that gaming has ever been in. Because like in the least healthy, obviously I'm talking about like these like massive, 9-figure, like $100 million plus like budgets for games, and they have to like sell them for $130 and like make the game worse in order to make the money back, etc. But you also have like so many small developers. Like 2007, look, I mean that was the year Halo 3 came out. I mean, like 2000, there have always been legendary years for games. Like 2004. Think about how many games came out in 2004, right? Halo 2, Half-Life, World of Warcraft, just to start right there. And so, absolutely, that's the case. However, I feel like right now, collectively, not just in 1 year, but in like the last 3 years, it has been a really great time for games. And I would say even the last 3 to 5 years. But the problem is that it has also been a really bad time for other games. You've had some amazing games that are so good, and you've also have total fucking trash. And I think that's the big difference, is like now you have such a big disparity. Whereas before, I feel like the quality of games was a lot more narrow, but there weren't as many players in the space. Whereas now, yeah, ever since COVID, I feel like there's so many people that can just make like a small scale game like Animal Well, Another Crab's Treasure, Blasphemous. Like we've got a lot of like very, very small games, Coffin of Andy and Laylee. Like these small scale games that are very successful and have a great audience. I think that this is what things are going to go back to, because games, I do feel like unironically, we have gotten into the quadruple A games where games are so big. They are such a monumental undertaking that it's not even the same as it used to be. Like, the games are just so much infinitely bigger. And so I think that's what's happened. Yeah, games become too big to fail, and I think that makes them also too big to succeed. Because if you make a game that's too big to fail, you have to make it appeal to so many people to where it doesn't have to fail or it can't fail. And then whenever you do that, you basically make it so sterile that it's not exciting or fun anymore. I think Starfield's a great example of that. Let's hope indie devs can use AI to cut edges in a lot of ways to do AAA indie games. We need that. I think everybody wants to see that. Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, I'm just really hoping that that's what happens. I mean, we'll have to wait and see, but I am optimistic.